this should be what it should be. It should be the Celtics in 5, like Noop said earlier, right? The interesting part to me is we're still at a pretty big spread, 8.5, and the total 224.5. We talked about this a little bit yesterday in that this might be an opportunity, if not today, then certainly game 3, if we should get points again in this one, is an opportunity to buy back on the under. I think I might still lean over tonight, even as this number continues to grow.
Remember last year, they lost both home games to Miami at this point in the conference finals. So is that going to be where they wouldn't cover? Obviously, they win game 1, but they wouldn't cover this one. I don't know. I feel like I have to bet Boston, and I don't want to bet Boston. Like that's my issue right now. I still don't trust this team. And Tatum wasn't that good in regulation. The final box score looks a lot different than the reality of that game. But, the number dropping a little bit to 8.5. I feel like I've got to go there. And then the total flies over, even in regulation, before we got to OT in game 1. Both series do that early on. I am looking at that total, 224.5. I don't know if you have to go full game, though, because if it does end up being a blowout, that could hurt you there, too. Where, typically, who cares? Bunch of backups in the final quarter. Maybe you would look at the total in the first half or the first quarter. 57.5 in the first quarter. Celtics typically come flying out of the gates at home. 115.5. I think that's telling you something, though. Aren't they telling us something with that number? 115.5 for the first half, but for the game it's 224.5. That maybe they do expect things to get away from Indiana a bit.
I love the first half over. I think you could also even go just Indiana team total first half over, because you know that they're going to be coming out with their hair on fire after kind of giving that game away. It seemed like after Indiana kind of settled into the game, and Celtics made that early, 12-2 run, and then Indiana settled in, the Celtics had some trouble with Indiana's movement, getting up and down the floor, just the constant ball movement they had. And I think that's going to be something that early on, again, Indiana can take advantage of. So I don't want to play the full game in terms of the total. I'm with you, Joe. I think the Celtics are the right side. I don't want to play that, especially because going into this series, like how many people did you hear say, oh, well, you have to take the Pacers in game 2 because the Celtics blow every game 2. I'm not sure that's going to be the case, even if they lost this game 1. But I think you look at this game solely as like a first half and take whatever you like in the first half, because who knows what's going to happen in the second, whether the Pacers are able to keep up or the Celtics just blow them out completely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Also, that Jason Tatum under 5.5 assists, the most bet prop at BetMGM right now. Miles Turner under 1.5 blocks. Nembhard under 4.5 assists, one of the most bet player props as well. Siakam over 20.5 points. Al Horford, Joe's guy, under 21.5 PRA at he's minus dead. 130. As he's dead.
He was confirmed dead the other night. So
weekend at Bernie's.
Do you think they're gonna? Like I was Brown looking at Horford,
walking him up and down the court, making his arms move. Now,
I was looking at Horford props. Do we want to play the under? A guy like that is so respected, are they going to put him on the court less? Like that's something that I was considering. I don't know. It feels like they could do anything. The Pacers are like, yeah, you want to chuck 12 threes? Keep doing it, Al. Go ahead. They were fine letting him do that the other night.
I haven't seen anything posted at any actual books yet, but with JB Bickerstaff getting fired by the Cavs this morning, there is at BetOhio some hypothetical odds on who the Cavs' next head coach could be. And the top 3 names brought to mind are all established assistants around the NBA. Kenny Atkinson, who obviously has his experience in Brooklyn a few years ago, is the favorite at 2-1. David Adelman, Nuggets assistant, 4-1. James Borrego, Pelicans assistant, plus 575. Then we get to the interesting names, Kate. We get to J.J. Redick at 11-1 and Frank Vogel at 12.50. I think the first thing for the Cavs to figure out this offseason, obviously, is Donovan Mitchell and what that looks like going forward, with him eligible for an extension going into the final year of his deal. But this obviously is just as important because do you want the coach to have the rubber stamp of Mitchell? Is Mitchell going to be around beyond next year or even this offseason? Some interesting names out there.
Well, isn't JJ Redick already going to the Lakers? Like, that's
maybe he'll do both.
Somewhat penciled in. I mean, he can do it all, right? Call games, do podcasts with 75 different people, and coach an NBA team. I would be interested to see if any of the, and this would require going back and doing a little digging, but like, do any of the assistants that are potential candidates, do they have any history with Donovan Mitchell in terms of coaching him before? Because if they do, then maybe that coach can come in and work with Mitchell a little bit more and create the offense around him, keep him happy in Cleveland. Otherwise, I think Mitchell's kind of out the door. He didn't seem all that interested in staying in Cleveland. So if he wants out, you figure that stuff out, and then I think hire the head coach. But Vogel's an interesting name. It does seem like the NBA is leaning more towards hiring assistants and kind of bringing guys up that way versus just circling the same head coaching names over and over again, which Vogel has been a part of for the last couple of years.
Well, you guys are wrong on Redick, first off, because he's never going to be an NBA head coach, because I heard you can't put your hat on backwards, because if you do, you cannot be hired to be the leader of any team. So that's been out there, and he fired back. I do love that Redick does fire back at people. Like, you got something to say, whether on TV, whatever medium he's on. He's not scared to do that at all. Okay, I'm not out here saying Bickerstaff's the best coach in the world, but why did this go down? Is it Mitchell doesn't like him? We're trying to keep Mitchell. It's a last-ditch effort. Is it because you expected more than losing in 5 games in the conference semis against the NBA title favorite? Oh, by the way, your 2 best players got hurt. So are you putting that on Bickerstaff? And he did what the organization asked by tanking the end of the regular season, and they still fire his ass. I'd love to know the real reason, because there's a lot of things there that just seem to be on the unfair side of things, right? The way this whole thing went down.
Dallas has taken home court, but you watch that game. I think that game was really just played on the razor's edge. Either team could come out of there. Again, if Edwards can find a way to be a little bit more comfortable, if the Minnesota defense can adjust a little bit. I was actually surprised at how well Gafford and Lively played. I thought the Minnesota big men would do a little bit better there. So still a lot to figure out here. And as with any good series, it's a chess match. I'm curious to see what changes Minnesota makes, what changes Dallas tries to make.
So Minnesota opened as the series favorite before game 1, obviously. Now it's flipped. Mavs are the favorite. Noops, if someone hasn't bet anything on the series yet, how do they approach jumping into that, knowing that this is probably going to be a back-and-forth series throughout?
Yeah, it's a tough entry point right now because the Mavericks, again, they win last night. They're now small favorites. I think if you're looking to back Dallas, you're trying to back Dallas minus 1.5 games. It's one of my favorite things to do with underdogs in series before they start, or teams that are the road team. Basically, the road team gets to host game 6. That means Dallas has a chance to win it at home in 6. If you're looking to back the Mavericks, go ahead and try to lay minus 1.5 games. I think they can close it out in 6. If you're looking to bet Minnesota and you haven't already gotten some, grab yourself a little bit of Timberwolves right now. I think that's a good value. Plus, I think it's right around plus 145.
Speaking of quarterbacks who people may not be excited to see thrown into the mix right away, I don't know. Maybe people are. When we look at the rookie passing yards leader market, the top 5 right now, no surprise, are the 5 that we expect to become starters at some point throughout the season. Penix farther down the board. Spencer Rattler actually has a shorter number than Michael Penix Jr., which is interesting, 60-1 rather than Penix's 80-1. Caleb Williams, the clear favorite here, Joe, even money. Jaden Daniels plus 250. McCarthy plus 350, better than Knicks at 8-1 in May. at 16-1. I think Caleb is the obvious answer here, given the weapons around him. I can understand why McCarthy might have a slightly better number than Nix and May because of the weapons at his disposal. I still
Sure.
think the smartest thing, and it's not just me being a JJ McCarthy hater, I still think the smartest
Yeah, it
thing for the
is.
Vikings is, I mean, that's part of it, sure. But I still think the smartest thing for the Vikings is bring him along slowly. Don't start JJ McCarthy before like late November if you can avoid it at all costs, because you've already decided you're in a bit of a retool mode anyway, and it's more about managing that and bringing him along. I think if JJ McCarthy should start before like week 6, week 7, it's gonna hurt him even more than coming in with the lack of experience that he comes in with. But like, obviously that would help your rookie passing yards leader number if you're hoping that McCarthy starts earlier.
Yeah, I thought my thinking is at this point McCarthy's definitely sitting, and they want him to sit as long as possible. That's what Darnold's brought in to be a bridge, and that's been talked about a little bit. So I would be floored if they go week 1. Let's go, JJ McCarthy. It's your time. I think they're willing to take that slide back for a little bit as long as you can get Justin Jefferson to buy in to the long-term plan that they do have. Mike Clay of ESPN put out his projections. He's really good at it. And I was taken back how close he has everybody. So he put Caleb as the passing leader of the rookies, 35-32. He put McCarthy second, 5 yards behind Caleb Williams. So he's saying it's a toss up. Their numbers are identical. And then he put Daniels less than 100 behind those guys at 34-57, and Drake May as well. I don't think Drake May's going to play for a while. I expect McCarthy to sit at least a month. The starters are going to be Caleb, Daniels, and probably Nix. So those are the only names that I would consider for this market. How about you, Kate?
I'm right there with you. I think you could almost narrow this even slimmer to 2. Like Jaden
Yeah.
McDaniels, the way he's able to use his legs, are you going to get a ton of passing yards? And I think you said, Joe, you just said, yeah, they're thinking I was going to say Williams and Daniels, right? I almost think Nix might be someone to look at. Like
Right.
Sean Payton picked him to be the quarterback of the future for the Broncos. The Broncos are probably going to be playing from behind a ton, right? Which means they're going to be throwing the ball. Jaden Daniels is going to be using his legs. He's going to be running. And Caleb Williams, clearly the favorite, and for very good reason with the receiving room that they have. It's just chalky. You're not getting much value there. So if you're talking value, then I think you have to go Nix, which is kind of sounds crazy. And I don't love it. It doesn't make me comfortable, but it just seems like the most logical for the value.